Pandey. I'm currently working as an assistant professor in Bharati University, and I have been practicing as a consultant endodontist as well as an aesthetic dentist. So today we'll be talking about regenerative endodontic procedures. What are they? Basically, regenerative endodontic procedures, they has been bridging the gap that earlier exists between the biology and the clinical practices. So these will be the content that we'll be covering today. Let's start with the introduction. So what is it? Basically, what happens is usually the younger children, they are more prone to trauma cases, such as trauma to anterior region is basically the more prone zone area. So in cases which results in a complicated tooth fracture, which results in the loss of closure of the apical area, hence resulted into an open apex, loss of tooth development. In cases, the management is typically difficult. Hence, the management of these immature non-vital teeth considered a big challenge. What earlier we used to do is, we used to treat it surgically, then followed by retrograde filling. Then these modification was done that to eliminate the surgical procedures, non-surgically these treatment were being performed and the apical barrier formation was done non-surgically. Followed by a customized GP obturation is being done to fill the root canal, followed by a coronal seal. But what is being done today is there is a paradigm shift which can be seen in the treatment protocol from this conventional or surgical procedures to more biologically driven procedures, such as regenerative endodontic procedures, where what we do is we ultimately aim to preserve the pulp dentine complex and to regenerate what has been lost and what has been natural. This is the case, for example, case of trauma in which the apex was not being closed and a large periapical lesion we can see at the apex, followed by we place a coronal barrier of MT of 3 to 4 mm, followed by a coronal seal with any restorative material, which can be done. Followed by we can see there is an apical closure at the end, which usually seen at the follow-up radiograph. So what is regenerative endodontic procedures? It is nothing but a biologically based procedure which replaces what is being damaged, that is dentine or the root structure, to replace what can be done, that is to regenerate the pulp dentine complex. These procedures, they aim to regenerate the pulp dentine complex which has been lost due to infection or any anomaly, or the most common cause is the trauma which resulted in the necrotic pulp. Hence, what are the prerequisites which has been important, such as the canal should be disinfected properly, a scaffold should be placed for the growth. Third, a coronal access should be sealed properly such that there is no chances of infection that can occur in the later process or later stages. So few studies which was being done clinically to evaluate these regenerative endodontic procedures has stated that about 70 to 100% has resulted into a success rate. They has either healed the periapical lesion, clinically signs and symptoms were eliminated. All the things that has been important to evaluate that the process has been regenerated, the structure has regenerated to its natural tooth structure or the function and aesthetics. So in which cases we can perform regenerative endodontic procedure, or we can say revascularization. It can be done in the case of immature avulsed teeth. Secondly, it can be done in immature permanent teeth which has an apical periodontitis, or an immature teeth with apical periodontitis or abscess, or in cases of sinus tract as well. So what is the main goal for this regenerative endodontic procedures? The goal is to regenerate the pulp dentine complex which was lost, to revive the tooth structure that was lost, as well as the function and its aesthetics, to resolve the apical periodontitis if in case it was present. So it was divided into three goals. The first is the primary goal, which is to eliminate all the clinical signs and symptoms which was there, followed by a healing of the bone, which is very important. The second is we can see that the root walls should be thickened, as well as followed by an apical closure at the end of the apex. Third, it should be positive to the vitality testing as well. And the most important is the pinnacle, which has been said, is the histological confirmation that the regeneration has been occurred. So for all these things to occur, we require basically a triad. This triad comprises of stem cells, scaffold, and growth factors. Without any of these, it will result in a failure. So what is stem cells? Stem cells are nothing but a cells which has the capacity to regenerate and take its form, such as mesenchymal stem cells are most commonly predominant found in the oral cavity. they has the ability to take up the structure of what is being lost and what is actually required as an outcome procedures. So these cells, they differentiate and proliferate into the desired outcome. Then what is growth factors? Growth factors are nothing but they are biological factors which regulate these stem cells to form the desirable cells which we require. These are nothing but a protein which bind to the receptors of the cells and induce its proliferation and differentiation. Followed by these growth cells, they control the stem cells activity, such as they increase the rate of proliferation or they induce its differentiation of cells into the type of tissue we usually require. So what are these growth factors which are predominantly seen and predominantly involved in the regenerative endodontic procedures? The most commonly predominant one is the transforming growth factor beta 1, insulin growth factor 1 and 2, platelet-derived growth factor, vascular endothelial growth factor, and interleukin 1, 4, and 6 can also be seen. Then lastly is the scaffold. Scaffold is nothing but a 3D structure which has a growth factor, but it is also a structure which provides like a bed to the stem cells and growth factor to get attached to the surface and resulted into the proliferation of stem cells to have a desired outcome which is required. So these are cells which support organization as well as vascularization. They aid stem cell proliferation and differentiation similar to the growth factors. Then they lead to improved and faster tissue development. They contain nutrient that promotes its survival and growth in the future. They prevent any bacterial ingrowth in the process as well as in the future, as well as mechanical and biological functions they use to help them. So in this, we'll be studying about the revascularization procedure that was performed clinically by me, in which I have used a PRF as a scaffold. So what is PRF? Let us understand a little bit about it. So PRF is nothing but a second generation platelet concentrate. So first generation platelet concentrate was the PRF, which was the first one to came into the line, after which PRF came. It is nothing but an autologous which is being prepared without an anticoagulant, whereas PRP we can see usually require an anticoagulant such as heparin or sodium citrate. They usually contain platelet, fibrin, growth factors. They are rich in leukocytes, cytokines, and glycoprotein. They are very easy to use, easy to prepare, as well as they are very biocompatible to the surrounding structure where they have been placed. Very simple procedure to prepare it as well as to use it. Nothing big of an armamentarium is required or nothing big of a procedure is being needed, just a centrifugation machine, which is also not very costly as we can see. So in what all procedures we can use PRF? These can be used to manage a large periapical defect or in any post-surgery recovery, which was a large defect was there, or to repair any perforation, such as in case of pulpal floor perforation, or in case of revascularization of immature necrotic teeth. So to understand what is the difference between PRP and PRF, let us understand what is the similarities between the both. They both have been obtained from the human body. The person body itself, the blood is being withdrawn to prepare the PRF or PRP. Similarly, they underwent a centrifugation, which is a similar process, followed by their being injected back into the human body as well. Secondly, they both contain leukocyte, platelet, and RBC, but the amount or the concentration they have is different in both. Thirdly, they are both used in the cosmetic concern areas or cosmetic procedures a lot. So PRF, they usually have a higher concentration of leukocyte, platelet, and RBC compared to PRP, whereas in PRF, they are usually prepared at a lower speed for a shorter duration of time. But PRP, they usually require a higher speed and for a longer duration of time. So it has been said because of this factor that the PRF, they usually release the growth factor at a slower rate and for a longer duration of time. So it can be very effective and good in cases of a chronic lesion where we require a long-term slow release of growth factors such that the healing could occur. Whereas in PRP, a faster rate of growth factor is being released immediately, but for a longer duration, if we'll see, so it's not there as compared to the PRF. In PRF, it is 100% natural, so no additive is required or anticoagulant. But in PRP, we do require an additive such as heparin or sodium citrate. In PRFs, in smaller settings also it can be done, like number of settings has been reduced, whereas in PRP, the number of settings has been more. So which one is better? So how to decide which one is better and which one to be used in which cases? To decide that, it should be depend on the clinical application they being used for or the desired outcome we require from it. Such as PRF usually said to be used in regenerative endodontic procedures or revascularization. They are more good, and the successful outcome has been more good in cases of PRF when used for revascularization when compared with the cases of PRP used for revascularization, or in cases of chronic lesion where a longer lasting release of growth factors are required. But PRP can be used where faster healing is required, such as in cases of grafting, where already a bone graft is being placed, but what is required is the regeneration of the bony part which has been lost, or a large bony defect which was earlier present. So how it is being prepared? The blood is usually drawn from the cubital vein and is being transferred to the tube, followed by placement into the centrifugation machine. So what happens when the blood is being placed inside the centrifugation machine, and how the PRF is being formed? The plasma fibrin, upon centrifugation, they undergo a slow natural polymerization because no additive is being added in PRF. First, they will form a mesh kind of a thing. Fibrin mesh is being formed, just similar to a web mesh we have seen in this, we usually know. So in this mesh, there is incorporation of platelet leukocytes. All the blood cells, which is important for the later stage, they get incorporated in this mesh and get entangled inside this mesh. Further followed by the platelet, they degranulate and release cytokines. Followed by the cells, they usually migrate and proliferate within the mesh, and they form a stabilized cells which act as a growth factor release also for growth factor, because they have certain amount of growth factor incorporated in the PRF, as well as a small amount of stem cells also. So this is how upon centrifugation a PRF is being obtained. As we can see, the bottom layer is the RBC, the middle layer is the PRF, and the uppermost layer is the plasma. This plasma can be used for the injectable part as well, but the bottommost part has to be removed. So a sterile tweezer is being used to remove the middle part, basically the fibrin part. We used to remove the fibrin part with the help of a sterile tweezer and cut the bottommost part, which is the red blood cells. For different preparation, it has been said that different centrifugation time is being required. Such as there are different type of PRF we can prepare. Advanced PRF and advanced PRF plus. They have been said to have a higher concentration of platelet leukocyte in it, whereas injectable PRF, they are the plasma layer, as we have seen in the earlier, the uppermost part, they are usually used in case of an injectable PRF. So these are very easy to apply inside the canal and very easy to use. Then the titanium and the growth factor impregnated PRF. And there are different centrifugation RPM with the time duration has been mentioned for the process to prepare these kind of PRF, different types of PRF. So how to handle this PRF? These are the instrument or armamentarium that is usually used in case of PRF. This is a tray in which we used to place the PRF, followed by the small tray we used to prepare a PRF membrane. What we used to do is, after the PRF has been removed from the test tube, we used to place it inside this tray, followed by compression with the help of this plate for 2 to 5 minutes, such that not a hard compression but a light compression is being made, so that they resulted into a flat PRF is being prepared, which can act as a membrane. If in cases we want to use it in a surgeries like endosurgery, we can use as a membrane rather than using an artificial membrane. We can use a PRF membrane. This is just like a bowl. We used to mix this bone graft with the help of plasma. We used to prepare a sticky bone that can also be used in surgical endodontic procedures. This is a sterile tweezers and scissors, and different types of armamentariums which can be used, spatulas which can be used for mixing, and this can be used for just placing of the PRF inside the canal. So it has been said that PRF handling, if done immediately, is being better rather than just holding it for a longer duration of time. Whereas if we have to store the PRF, in the next video, if we have to store the PRF for 1 to 2 hours during the treatment protocol, then it should be stored inside a saline or a ringer solution. But if we have to store it for a longer duration of time, for example, 3 to 4 hours or more than 3 to 4 hours, then it should be stored at a room temperature specifically, and that too in a saline, such that the growth factors or the any factor which has been important in the release, in the revascularization process, they don't get disrupted or destructed. There is one video which I'll be showing to you, which will explain how to prepare a PRF membrane, as I earlier told you. How the PRF is being removed with the help of a tweezer, cut it with a scissor, the RBC membrane, and just Slight compression resulted in a PRF membrane. So now let's start with the clinical application of PRF or scaffolds in endodontics, basically the regenerative endodontic procedure. So this was a preoperative photograph of the patient that came to the department with a chief complaint of pain. He was a young male patient. He has a chief complaint of slight discoloration in the upper front region. And he said that he has a pain. While checking on the tendon percussion, it was positive, as well as there was a swelling in the the swelling was also seen intraorally, followed by which we asked the patient if there was any history of trauma was present. Then the patient suggested yes, there was a history of trauma. He didn't remember exactly when, but it happens a very long time ago. When he was a child, he was playing, then trauma was occurred directly into the frontal region of the tooth. At that time, he was asymptomatic for a very long duration of time. Till now, the symptom has started to arise. So on medical and extraoral examination, that was not considered very significant. Rather than no soft tissue abnormalities was there at the time. There was no response to cold test and EPT test. Radiographic examination was taken, which reveals an open apex, followed by a resorption on the lateral side, we can see. So the diagnosis that was being made is symptomatic apical periodontitis with necrotic pulp, followed by the treatment protocol. Okay, so for the regenerative endodontic procedure, a treatment guideline was being suggested by American Association of Endodontology, which was recently being revised in the year 2021. So it has been divided into 2 settings. The whole procedure has to be completed in 2 settings, followed by a follow-up duration of at 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months. So the first foremost important thing that should be done in the cases of regenerative endodontic procedure is the case selection. Firstly, it has to be a necrotic teeth with immature open apex. Secondly, it should not be requiring a post-in coat or the final restoration that usually require a bulk of the restoration. Thirdly, the patient compliance, because the whole procedure is to be covered in 2 sittings, followed by a follow-up that is being done at a very later duration. So the patient should be compliant for the follow-up. Secondly, the patient informed consent, that is very important because of the following things which is being used, such as in case of the intracanal medicament, it can really result into the further discoloration of the teeth, which was the earlier chief complaint of the patient, discoloration. So what we do in the first setting is given local anesthesia will be given, isolation would be performed, followed by which access would be done. After this access has been prepared, we have to check that the canal is thoroughly clean. So what we do is we used to file the canal with a smaller number of file. The smaller number of file we just use to debride whatever is present inside the canal, followed by a copious irrigation that should, as been suggested by AAE, is that it should be 20 ml. So a copious irrigation should be done such that all the debris or any necrotic tissue or whatever is present, they should be flushed out from the canal, followed by an intracanal dressing which is being placed for 3 to 4 weeks, and a seal was done with a temporary restoration, and the patient was recalled after 2 to 3 weeks such that the patient is asymptomatic. He should be asymptomatic after the 2 to 3 weeks duration follow-up. So in next appointment, we will take up the patient blood or whatever scaffold has to be prepared according to that procedure would be done, followed by temporary would be removed. Again, we will re-access the teeth. We will remove the intracanal medicament, following which we will irrigate the canal copiously with EDTA, then sodium hypochlorite. But there is one thing which is being suggested by AAE is that the concentration of sodium hypochlorite, it has to be less, as well as the concentration of the intracanal medicament which we are being using, such as triple antibiotic base if we are giving rather than calcium hydroxide, then its concentration has to be less again. Why this was suggested? Because the stem cells which we are being using or which is being used in the case of regeneration, they should not be get disrupted or destroyed in the process. Hence, it has been suggested that a lower concentration should be used. And it has been stated and further backed up with the literature that the lower concentration sodium hypochlorite and intracanal medicament has resulted into a success rate of higher success rate, followed by MTA or any bioactive molecule. Biodentine can also be used. 3 to 4 mm of plug is being created, followed by which restorative material is being done, that is a permanent restoration after 24 hours. A follow-up of 6, 12 and 24 months in which all the goals, that was the primary, secondary and tertiary goal which we read earlier, should be there to evaluate the clinical success of the treatment. So this was the case report of mine, where a minimal filing was done with a 10K file, such that all the canal debris as well as the a bacteria that has been eliminated from the canal walls with a smaller filing in the circumferential area, followed by a copious irrigation with saline and sodium hypochlorite. And in the second visit, as you can see the background, the blood was being taken from the patient cubital vein. 10 ml of blood is being taken and the teeth was reassessed, followed by removal of the intracanal medicament, and the copious irrigation was done again. Then in the second appointment, what was being done is, once the blood is being removed, it was transferred into the test tube, followed by placement into the centrifugation machine, after which the centrifugation machine process is being completed, a PRF is being obtained, and once the PRF is being removed from the test tube with the help of a twister and cut it with the scissor, the RBC, this is how a PRF membrane was obtained. And this was usually done at 300 RPM in our case for 15 minutes, and it was done in a tabletop centrifugation machine from Remilab, Mumbai. So this is how, after this is being done, the minimal filing was done, irrigation is being done, the PRF has been placed inside the canal. A short video showing how the PRF was being placed inside the canal. With the help of a hand plugger, we were just pushing the PRF inside the canal below the level of CEJ as apical as possible. In the small increments, the PRF was being placed and pushed beyond the CEJ. Once this whole process was being done, a coronal barrier of MTA was placed, upon which a damp cotton was being placed such that the MTA could set and temporary restoration was being done, and the patient was being recalled after 24 hours for the permanent restoration. But in our case, only 3-month follow-up was possible. Hence, the patient was not very compiled for the follow-up and he did not show up. But a telephonic conversation was being kept for the 2 years, which revealed that the patient was completely asymptomatic with no pain or discomfort. But it only suggested us that the clinical outcome has been successful. But to understand the radiographical outcome, to understand that the apex has been closed or not, or the apical closure or the root maturity, which was not being taken because the radiographic follow-up was not present for the patient. So what usually happens in this case, how the stem cells interact with the growth factors in the scaffold, is a basic explanation or theoretical part to make you understand. Once we have given an intracanal medicament as a dressing, and in the follow-up treatment, what is done in the dentin matrix, there are bioactive molecule which is being present. They get released from the root canal walls and being present inside the canal as a free bioactive molecule. So what usually happens is, after the scaffold is being placed, the stem cells which are present at the apical area, these are the stem cells of apical papilla or the stem cells of periodontal ligament. These two stem cells are usually involved in the revascularization process. So they usually migrate from the apical area to inside the canal. This process is known as chemotaxis, the migration of stem cells from the apical to the canal, then followed by which revascularization and new blood vessels formation we can see. These stem cells combined with the bioactive molecule, they resulted in an odontoblast-like cells formation in the dental canal. And this is how a new layer is being formed, and the apical closure usually happens in a time frame which we see in a follow-up radiograph. So how to evaluate the radiographical or clinical outcome that it has been successful or not? So the primary outcome should be, there should be no clinical signs and symptoms, or in case of apical periodontitis or abscess, there should be no periapical radiolucency present. Then there should be, or either it has been reduced. If the lesion has been present, then it has been reduced in the size. If not, then we would say it is a disease and the treatment has resulted into a failure. The secondary we will check is the root development, that there is been closure in the apical diameter, or there is the thickening of the root canal walls, or we can say an apical closure has occurred. That is the secondary outcome we usually prefer. Followed by the tertiary outcome is the pulp vitality testing. Radiographically, how we can assess the outcome? This was an article given by Chen et al. In the year 2012, which type it into 5 criteria. The first, if there is an increased thickening and continued development. Type 2, where the development was not seen. Type 3, where the maturity was there but the apical foramen still remains open. 4 where there was severe calcification, and 5 where hard tissue barrier formation was seen. These were for the radiographic assessment that was given by Chen et al. Few studies which was done with the regenerative endodontic procedure using PRF, they stated that PRF as a valuable scaffold and it helps in the promotion of revascularization or regeneration. Whereas there was one study which stated otherwise, which stated that the PRP was way better than PRF as a scaffold. So what are the limitations that usually occur after this procedure? Regenerative endodontic procedure is being performed. Firstly, the patient compliance is very important. If there is a multiple visit which is being required, if the patient is not compiled, it will result in a failure itself. Secondly is the crown discoloration because of the medicament we use. Thirdly, rather than we usually require a repair, but true regeneration has not occurred, followed by a root fracture or intracanal calcification is the common occurring that has been usually seen. And thirdly, it can only be done in younger patients because the age is a very crucial factor in the regeneration or revascularization process. There was one systemic review article which stated that the common cause of failure of regenerating endodontic procedure is the persistent infection. And from the 13 of these cases, they see that the most common failure was infection only, which persisted. So let's just debunk the myths about the pulpal regeneration and what we need to know about it. So first myth which has usually been there is that pulp regeneration is only for children. No, it's not. Although age is very important, that it should be the patient should be younger age, because in older age this availability of stem cells in the apical area they usually decreases as the age increases. But it's not only for children, it can be done in younger patients as well as at the mid-age patients as well. As we can see in our case, the patient was 24 years old and the procedure was a clinically successful outcome, although radiographically we was not able to calculate. The second has been said that the pulpal regeneration is a quick fix. Though it's not, it do require a lot of sittings as well as a lot of follow-up radiograph which has been required to monitor that it has been regeneration has occurred or not. Then it has been experimental and unproven. No, that is definitely not true, because a lot of studies has been there in the literature which has suggested that there is 70 to 100% of success that is being seen with the help of different scaffolds that they have used and resulted in a success outcome. And lastly, they said that can pulp regeneration improve the strength of the tooth that has been weakened by decay? Then definitely yes, it can. It potentially increase the strength, and yes, it has resulted in increased strength in the follow-up radiographs. So let's finish it. Thank you.
Javelin, if you have someone doubt, you can ask them.
Yeah.
If any participants have any doubt, they can kindly unmute themselves or put the message in the chat box if required. Ma'am, there's a question.
Okay, the blood was withdrawn in the first appointment. No, the blood was withdrawn in the second appointment. The first appointment, only the access was being done. The canal was being cleaned and debride of anything that has been present inside the root canal, followed by which an intracanal dressing was being placed, and there was a temporary seal which was being done for 2 to 3 weeks, followed by which the patient was recalled after 2 to 3 weeks, and then the blood was being withdrawn and the whole procedure was being performed. No, usually for the management, we do not prescribe the patient any medication, because in the first appointment itself, we have been giving the patient an intracanal dressing, which will result in the subside of clinical signs and symptoms, which was there in the time of patients which came to the department or came to the clinic. So no need of any medication to prescribe to the patient. Yes, it can be done. In cases of sinus, also it can be done. How much time does it take to prepare? To prepare the membrane doesn't take that much time, because once the PRF is being prepared, we usually place it in the tray that as we shown in the diagram earlier. And what is being done is we usually just, with the help of a tweezer, we used to remove it from the test tube, cut the RBC, the lowermost layer. We just lay it down on the tray, and just slight compression, 3 to 5 minutes is required, followed by which we can use it as a membrane. So max to max 5 minutes, we would say 3 to 5 minutes is more than sufficient to prepare a membrane. Okay. Can we get this recorded lecture video?
Yes, we will upload it on YouTube.
Yeah. Surely you can. Thank you so much.
I guess questions are over, Chaplin.
Yeah.
We can end the session.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruchika ma'am, for this insightful session. A perfect blend of biology and clinical practice. Your expertise and clarity have truly helped us today to rethink the conventional approaches as well. So on behalf of Finance of Dentinos and all our attendees, we extend a heartfelt thanks. We look forward to more such enriching sessions with you.
Chaplin, we got two questions right now. Just now.
Sure.
Okay.
Where I can see the messages.
From Harsh Chauhan and Priya Jain.
Yeah. Is there any specific guideline for when to do the apexification and when regeneration? Okay. In cases, as it has been indicated, that in cases of immature teeth, permanent teeth, it should be an immature permanent teeth with open apex, or it can be a case of immature permanent teeth with apical periodontitis or sinus opening or a periapical lesion. In those cases, it can be performed. Whereas an apexification can be done in cases where already the regeneration has resulted into a failure. In those cases, we will undergo definitely apexification. Or in cases where we can see there is a large, this option is there and which is not being resolved, which cannot be resolved with regeneration. In those cases, we can also go for apexification. Or in cases where the patient age is actually a limiting factor. Is there any limitation? You have mentioned discoloration, but the case you shown was complaint of. Yes, definitely the patient we came to the department, he has already a chief complaint of discoloration, but with the use of intracanal medicament, it definitely resulted into a discoloration, like minocycline, which has been present in the triple antibiotic paste, it resulted in discoloration. So in our case, we use calcium hydroxide rather than a triple antibiotic paste at a lower concentration. Although a guideline which was being given by American Association of Endodontology, they also have suggested that a lower concentration should be used such that no destruction of stem cells as well as discoloration, which is the chief complaint, should not occur. How much the membrane has to be inserted inside? It should be beyond the CEJ level. Definitely it has to be below the level of CEJ. Do we fill it? No, it's not required to fill the complete canal or half canal. There is no such guideline that has been stated, but it should be half or it should be complete. But yes, it has to be placed below the level of CEJ such that 2 to 3 mm of barrier of bioactive molecules such as these MTA or biodentine, these material can be placed such that they act as a coronal seal, followed by which a coronal restoration could be done with a composite or GIC or resin modified GIC. In regeneration, teeth is vital and in apexogenesis, teeth is non-vital. Is that true? Yes. But no, but in regeneration, the teeth is not vital. It's a non-vital lesion. So in apexogenesis, what we do is a non-vital permanent teeth is being used. So here what we have done is a regeneration endodontic procedure. The already diagnosis was being made was a permanent immature but necrotic pulp. So it was a non-vital teeth. Okay. Is there any more questions?
I think questions are over. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.